because that's really all they could do. And they made these factory owners rich. But essentially, they gave their lives for it. And that's very similar. And so it's not that doesn't happen today. It does. It happened back in the earlier in the 19th and 20th centuries. So the conditions that they were forced to work under, in that case, were very before OSHA and all those things that cleaned up a lot of that stuff. Brother Kaufman, in his commentary, says that this is evidence that the place identified here is Jerusalem of Judea. Now, how did he come to that conclusion? He says that the rest of the civilized world would have had the work done by slaves. And this was not slave labor as such. I guess we could say, well, maybe it was slave labor, but the fact is that they were to be paid. And if they were slaves, they would not have been paid. Only in Palestine would farm laborers have been hired help. Elsewhere in the Roman Empire, the work would have been completed and done by the slaves who would not have been paid. The word phrase, which you have kept back by fraud, indicates the treatment that the poor of this day received from the rich. Another similar warning against this was from the Old Testament, found in Leviticus 19:13, where it stated, "You shall not cheat your neighbor nor rob him. The wages of him who is hired shall not remain with you all night until morning." You better pay him that day. So James is writing to the rich and addressing their utter disregard for the law. It was they claimed to keep the law, but they were, and so he would say, if we think back, the whole of the law has convicted you. You say you're doing this, but you're really not. So the whole of the law. There should have been, and for the good of all, there should have been a harmonious relationship between the laborers and the employee. That's what's best in the interest of both. It's what's best in the interest of today. The laborer has every right to expect a fair and honest wage for work done, and the employer has every right to expect a fair day's work for the wages paid. Neither can successfully exist without the other. This was not the case, as the wages were being withheld from the workers, and the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabbath. This, of course, is a figurative statement, and another example of one of these literary devices that James is using, this literary device called personification, where he is attributing the cries of here, he's attributing human characteristics to inanimate objects. And that's what a personification is. And the wages, he says, it's the wages that we're crying out. Wages can't cry out. But the fraudulent dealings with the rich against the poor seems to send up a cry to heaven. That's what James is saying. The word cry here means to be more than just weeping. It seems to indicate more of a yell to heaven for vengeance. Although the rich did not listen to the cries of the poor, God will. The word Sabbath here, Sabbath, S-A-B-A-O-T-H, comes from a Hebrew word which means host. And thus God is identified as the Lord of hosts. This is a term which denotes might and power and glory. These cries have gone up to a being that has power and might and glory. The term is used only one other time in the New Testament, and it's a quotation from the Old Testament. Is found in Romans 9:29. The message here is that God is not unmindful of the cries and oppressions of the poor, since his ears are always open to their cries, and he will avenge them in the final judgment, in the day of the final judgment. It's like James is using here a courtroom scene. And these cries are being witnesses against them. I've already said that Sabbath means host, and the phrase here declaring him to be the commander-in-chief of the universe. The judge here, of course, is the Lord himself. Well, we better stop there. We'll pick up with verse 5. I hear the classes in the back, and Jeanette will be fussing at me if I don't quit. So let's stop there. We'll start with verse 5 next week.